and some of the laity get pulled into the Khawarij, and they wind up following it. So all this time, the people of Sham could not be convinced to become Twelvers, couldn't be convinced to become Alawis, couldn't be convinced to become Bahris or Christians, Lutherans, and other groups. They couldn't be convinced of that. But the Khawarij make some inroads. And part of the reason for this is because they claim that, like dealing with the modernist menace, that we're going back to a better time, a simpler time, because this time is too complex. This whole thing about fiqh and madhabs, it's just too complex. We're going to go back to a simpler time when it was just the Quran and the Sunnah, when the Ummah was pure. Right?
So they're basically, instead of aiming at intellect, they're basically aiming at comfort and peace and such more of the emotional state.
Yes, and the interesting thing about it is none of them were part of the big jihad movements at the time. In fact, they were antithetical to many of the jihad movements because they said, well, how can you fight against these people when, how can you fight against them when your tawheed isn't even accounted for?
No.
How can you make jihad when your tawheed isn't accounted for? And this is just a fitna, this is a punishment for our sins, so we shouldn't fight.
Right.
And so there were people telling them not to. And the same thing happened in the Balkans and Afghanistan. The same thing happened just recently. So these are not unknown concepts. These are things that happened before. But in spite of this, they were happy to command people, don't fight these invading forces of modernists or Christian missionaries or others. But they were fine to fight Muslims, to engage in warfare, to destroy masjids, to steal the bodies of deceased people and move them because they were afraid people might do shirk. These are all the things that had to be dealt with. In the course of this happening, they decide against their better judgment, and I don't know what got into them to make them think to do this, but the grandsons tried to invite Mustafa ibn Ahmad Ash-Shatti to a da'wah to Salafiyah. So his response to this invitation to him and his cousin Muhammad Jamil is he writes An-Nuqul Ash-Shar'iyya fi ar-Radd 'ala al-Wahhabiyya, the divine texts in refutation and answer to Al-Wahhabiyya. And this book is where he's taken all 60 books of responsa literature that were written against Salafiyah. So from the time that it was founded by Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, the sons and grandsons, that's about 60 books that were written. He's gone through those books with particular emphasis on the first one, which is Imam Sulaiman Abdul Wahhab's Aswaq al-Lahiyya Fasl al-Khitab. He takes that and shrinks it down, then writes a smaller text, which is the divine texts, and then adds some important notes to that text. And the answer to them is done in a very systematic, because his answer in that book covers the main issues that they were presenting on their arrival in Sham. So they still have all 16 masail, but the most important ones that they were amplifying were those 6 units that he mentioned in the book.
Right.
So that's why he didn't mention the other 10 masail, because these ones were the doorway issues to the rest of them.
So, because one dealing with this cult should reference both book, right? Not just this one alone.
Yes. I think, and I'd say that the one thing that people should consider is the divine text tells you what Muslim orthodoxy affirms, that we affirm that visiting the graves is permitted. We affirm that intercession with the righteous is valid. We affirm that following mujtahids and making taqleed. We affirm that Tasawwuf is one of the signs of, like, we affirm these things. The divine lightning is about what Muslim orthodoxy is not about.
Allah.
We know that there are people that are doing things at the graves that are not permitted. We don't agree with that either.
Subhanallah.
But it doesn't take you out of the fold of Islam to do it. We know that there's people that are making oaths and doing things they're not supposed to, and making tawaf or doing sacrifices at graves, or using language that's not befitting when they make intercession with the righteous. They're using language that's not permitted to use. We know that. But that has nothing, that language being impermissible or not supposed to be done has nothing to do with the fact of whether or not they're inside the fold of Islam. This is an issue to do with proper adab and akhlaq when you're doing these things. So both books are important for different reasons.
So one book deals basically with affirmation and the other with refutation.
Yes. So both of them have their places, and you can see the emphasis. And it's one of the reasons I'm happy. I'm happy that the divine texts, that one was published first. When that was translated, that came out first. I'm happy that came out first, because if I'd put out the divine texts, if I put out the divine lightning first, I think people that didn't understand might have concluded that I'm denying intercession and I'm denying visiting the grave, because the language the book is written with, if you're not careful, it could make someone think this if they don't read carefully.
No.
But the divine texts came out first. And so people, okay, well, we accept intercession. We do everything else. We understand that. And then when the divine lightning came out, oh yeah, well, those are the extremes that people are doing. And yeah, of course we reject that, but that doesn't make those people kafir. It was just it was an easy transference from one to another. And it was a step up, because the divine texts was a smaller text that had 100 and something notes with it, whereas the divine lightning had like 653. So it was a careful step up from one to the other. Now, the divine lightning, the divine texts of Mustafa Ahmad Ash-Shatti, why is this book, why does it stand out as one of his most important things? I think that this book stands out because he's actually giving us two books in one, because originally the chapter at the end about Tasawwuf was a separate book. It's actually written two, but he included it within one of the printings, so I included it. So you're actually getting two.
I'm doing that.
But the divine texts, it launches wars on many different fronts. Within that book, he attacks the steady state theory of Frederick Hoyle, that matter's eternal. He attacks that. And I remember when I was going through it, I thought, subhanAllah, in the middle of dealing with like Salafiyah, he just brings up this point about, whoever says he matters eternal is a kafir. It's like, what? That just came out of nowhere. It just looked like it came out of nowhere, but you have to understand the era who he's dealing with and the time period. So he's fighting, it's like he's fighting all these wars, and he uses the divine texts as like this large flag that covers many things. Its emphasis is on the Wahhabiyah, but the fact that he saw fit to mention the issue of Frederick Hoyle's steady state theory within there means that he sees like Salafiyah as part of the modernist movement. So he sees it as part of modernism. So he lays out in the beginning that he saw some of the laity confused, and he saw the creed of some of the laity becoming corrupted. And then he lays out, as is his methodology, what the book will be. And he deals first with who has the right to speak in the religion with authority. Who has the right to speak in the religion? And so he lays out a very careful discussion about ijtihad, who is a mujtahid, who is a muqallid, who's making taqleed, who should have taqleed made to him, who has a right to be an imam in the religion. And we don't mean like leading people in the salah. We mean like that they're followed, like capital I, that they're followed, that it's permitted to follow these people in your religion and to base it on them. He covers this in extreme detail. Then he also, within that same area, as like an addendum, discusses innovation. Because in his time, innovation becomes confused. And so in the three categories that we mentioned of people that responded to modernism, you had extremes within those other two categories. So some said that the whole idea of modernism in the modern world, it's all a bid'ah and must be avoided. So you had people saying that the use of the telegraph was haram. Learning other languages besides Arabic is haram. The use of pocket watches and things is haram. When radio came out, people were saying, well, how are you getting these signals from here to another location? They must be using jinn. So you had people that were trying to sabotage radio stations, trying to destroy television towers, trying to destroy radio transmission centers. So this was one of the outcomes of modernism, that it produced this extreme. And he walked this balanced methodology, because Mustafa Ahmad Ash-Shatti, it's mentioned that he listened to the radio. Like he would listen to, so he's showing that, and the fact that he used the telegraph to convey some fatwa, like he would use the telegraph, which means that he doesn't think those things are impermissible. He was intentionally using those items to show people they're not impermissible, because people's understanding of bid'ah was starting to become corrupted. People were saying, oh, if you use cutlery, that's haram, like knife and fork and spoon, that's haram, right? Mixing different fibers of clothing, that's haram. So people started to think that because the word bid'ah in Arabic linguistically is used for when something wasn't there and now it's there, that also means it has religious connotations as well, which this is not true, because the bid'ah in religious connotation means something being attributed to the religion that either has no text or previous precedent that matches with the revealed law. So something may not have been there before, but if it matches with something in the revealed law, like putting a roof on a masjid, right? That the roof of Al-Masjid al-Nabawi, it didn't have a roof, it had palm trees. It didn't have a roof. But putting a roof over a masjid to guard it from the elements getting in by rainfall, in which the masahif might get destroyed, right? This is perfectly permitted.
And since you're talking about these inventions coming about in their lifetime, and the people, some of these two groups have extreme reactions, but then on the other side you have marja people who are giving you the rulings exactly how it is. Now, people hearing this today, or born in this age, they're born with this technology. For them, it's like, but why were they disputing it? Because to them, it's so normal to live with this technology today. But imagine you're in a world where you have never seen something like that, a radio, a television, a phone, and suddenly it's introduced. It's strange, right? Like that concept.
Well, it's the same thing that's happening now, where marja people are discussing the topic of gene editing. Right. So now you have to deal with these issues. The fact that you have people now that are they're attempting to build towns. They're not doing cities yet, but they're attempting to build towns along shallow portions of the ocean floor. So now there will be people that will be living on the ocean floor.
And travel to Mars as well.
That's correct. So you have to deal with these things. I mean, we've already seen the issue of cosmonauts going above Earth, and that issue had to be discussed with respect to facing the Qibla and making salah, because Bandar ibn Abdul Aziz went above the Discovery space shuttle in 1986, and that triggered rulings of what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. The fact that the water's recycled, so do you use the recycled water? Do you make tayammum? Like, all these issues came up.
Exactly.
And they have to be resolved. Issues in medicine, IVF treatment, AIDS treatment, all these other things, cancer medication, the use of different types of anesthesia, right? And what that entails and what that means, brain deaths, nerve deaths, other things that we're dealing with, blood donating, organ donating, right? These things that have come to pass, different types of crop cultivation. So now we have in the state of Israel, which is currently in combat against our mujahideen, we ask that Allah gives them victory. They're using hydroponics, which is growing crops without the use of soil. So you'll go into greenhouses or locations and just see plants hanging in midair, or inside of like containers, and there's no dirt. They're just hanging in midair. So they're using hydroponics. They're using methods that aren't dirt to grow fruit and veg. Can you do that? Can you not do that? Right? All these issues come up.
Although there are some conflicting reports about that, there's been recently some cloud seeding being done in, I believe it's the Emirates, where it has
they're using cloud seeding, which is similar to using silicon, and other things like that. People have a wrong understanding where they think that they're literally making it rain. It's not that. It's there are already clouds there, but you're trying to encourage rainfall
Somehow.
or to encourage rainfall more in an area, or a cloud that's moving in an area to release more rainfall or a larger amount, or to stimulate it, right? So it's already going to happen. It's how much you're stimulating, what you're stimulating, right? Any more than when they talk about cloning sheep. You're not creating a sheep from nothing. You're taking an existing embryo and you then add details to it or what have you. You grow it, then it's brought to term. It's not that you're creating from nothing, right?
And
so these are all things though that Marja people have to deal with. And in the time of Imam Mustafa Ash-Shatti, he had to deal with the major things that were occurring in his time.
Well, my thought also about this was that since these ahkam have already passed, they've been now established. So now it's normal. But the ahkams that we're going through currently, some of them still need to be worked out. And once they're worked out fully, then I think people have the same thought about them as they have about the classic technology as well. Then
yes, and these things will carry on. Now, slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some of them, and again, you'll find the same thing happening in this time. There are people who will just tell you that, oh yes, the internet altogether is just haram, stay off it. So what?
Oh.
That's arch conservatism. What? Listen, if you do that, that's up to you if you do that. But when you have 50% or 60% of transactions happening online and 50% of internet traffic traveling through India and Asia, the rest of Asia proper, how are you going to do business when you're ordering packages, when you're receiving mail? If you want to find out, wait a minute, did my letter come yesterday? Well, that letter has a tracking number. How are you going to find the tracking number? Oh, well, I'll just use my telephone. Okay, are you using a touch-tone phone or a rotary like me? I only just now got a touch-tone phone last year because my mom yelled at me about, what are you still using a rotary for? This is the 70s. But that's what I like, and that's what I'm used to. Not because I'm against technology. It's easy, the reception's clear, and this is what I grew up with. But I've had to switch over to a touch-tone telephone. So now when you call up and you say that you're avoiding technology, you're then speaking with AI because the AI says, welcome to so-and-so. Please type in your. So now you have to deal with it again. So what are you going to do about that? Are you going to walk down to the post office? Some post offices don't even have a walk-in center because they're not even manned anymore. And most banks have now closed up most of their on-site business. Now you have to actually go online to work with your bank.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about the inexorable march of technology and everyone's got to accept it. I'm saying those that want to adopt the position that you don't interact with the internet at all, that's up to them. If you pass a ruling and say, as there been a small body of shares, you pass a ruling that no one at all should be interacting with the internet. You're not alone, but I would say that you're in a small room.
Sheikh, I've also noticed and heard myself from their lectures and the brothers who were upon these aberrant organizations. Some of them do tend to have this hatred towards technology and saying we need to withdraw, we need to leave our phones, we need to withdraw to the message. And I think this is quite similar to what you just mentioned earlier about some of these extreme people who took this position of, secluding his areas.
Absolutely, because when you start taking these ideas on face value like them, you're running in the opposite direction of imams like Mustafa Ash-Shatti and others who dealt with it head on. You don't say when you see people invading Sham, oh, this must be the time of just reflection, and you go and you hide in a cave. No, what are we going to do about these people? Omar Mukhtar, Abdul Karim al-Rifi, Al-Amir Abdul Qadir al-Zairi, like all these different people. What are you going to do about this? How are you going to contend with it? And it can't be where we'll just pray about it, make dua. No, you've already made dua, you've already prayed. Now what are you going to do? So now you have to face it. And the way to face the scourge of modernism is to face it head on, not like in defense of and trying to find ways to reconcile with it, but you have to say, we're going to face the scourge head on. Now, And age in and of itself isn't impermissible or harmful, because modernism is coming out of it's coming out of the Victorian era. The Victorian era itself, a date and time on a calendar in and of itself isn't sinful, but sinful actions or popular sinful things are the things that will be sinful. So every era has its fitan. And the fitan that came out of the colonial period or what have you is modernism, industrial revolution. These are fitan that came out, but that doesn't mean that everything from that era is haram, because you'll find again some people that go to extremes believe that yes, everything in this era is haram. Technology is haram.
Yeah.
This is haram. That's haram. But no. This is false. This is false equivalency, and you're also creating false dilemmas that are not true. Every age has its fitan. Every age. So in my era, growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was the crack epidemic, the gang wars, the West Coast invasion by the military, like all these other things. These were the fitan, right? After that, it was something else. But it doesn't mean that the 80s itself was a time that you should have wished you were never born in, because the 80s was somehow an era that was so wicked, everything that came out of it was bad. No, this is incorrect.
No.
And what it does is it causes you to become very jaded, and it also makes you very paranoid if you live like this. So every era has its good, and good came out of the decade on the Kafir calendar called the 80s, or the decade called the 90s, right? That's where I began, and the Kafir era of the 90s as Talib al-Ilm, right? So that we don't say everything that comes out of this is wrong or whatever else. That's not living in reality.
And these people today, and I'm talking about these aberrant preachers and organizations in the West who are so opposed to technologies, what if certain technology benefits people? Now, for example, the Neuralink warp designed by Elon Musk. Now, I believe this is also used for disabled patients as well.
Yes.
Now, what would happen if someone is in need of this Neuralink and is given the opportunity for it to be implanted? Now, these preachers who are so opposed to technology, how will they answer this issue, for example?
Yes, they're going to find themselves in problems. Just as much as when they told people that you shouldn't let anyone put anything in your ear because it's a trick to download your brain onto some chip or whatever else. But now you find that people that previously were either hard of hearing or completely deaf have had their hearing restored.
Right.
Well, subhanAllah, what's wrong with that?
Exactly.
What's the issue with that? Oh no, that's magic. No, it's not magic. We know, according to the books of fiqh and other things, the definition of what magic is, and that's not magic. These are things that are types of sciences, and they're types of medicine, or they're tools that are used within medicine. Well, Imam Mustafa Ash-Shatti does the same thing. Now, in his next unit, he then covers the discussion connected to what is idolatry, because some of the people that were bringing Salafiyah into Sham made idolatry into this thing in which all idolatry was based on worship. So if you do anything that's not within the revealed law, it becomes a shirk, but in specifics, a shirk of worship. When in reality, it actually watered down shirk, because by pointing the finger and labeling everything as shirk, it actually takes away the real severe nature of what shirk is. And it's something that Imam Mustafa Ash-Shatti pointed out, rahimahullah, where he explained that when you discuss issues of shirk, shirk isn't just in worship. So the last ayah in Surah Al-Kahf, it's 105 in Qalun, 110 in Hafs. It's وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا, or fi ibadati. I do not associate in the worship of my Lord with anyone. So that's that ayah that says shirk can be a worship. But there's another one in ayah 26. وَلَا يُشْرِكْ فِي حُكْمِهِ أَحَدًا. And one is not to associate partners with Allah in his legislation. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ. Are they associating, are they seeking the legislation of the days of ignorance? Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 51, right? And there are other examples where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions shirk in his lordship, shirk in worship, shirk in his names and attributes, shirk at ta'ah. Surah Al-An'am, the 6th surah, 121. Are you, if had you obeyed him, innakum la mushrikun, you would have become mushrikun. Or Surah At-Tawbah, the 9th surah, 31. They took their monks and their rabbis and Isa ibn Maryam, the Messiah, as lords besides Allah, even though they've been told not to. So this is telling you that there's different types of major shirk. But by only pinholing shirk on one thing and then pointing to every single thing as shirk, you take away the real sinister nature of what shaitan does and how wicked shirk really is. And his ability to assess this issue and to put us back on track regarding the real danger of shirk and how careful we should be was a stroke of genius in that regard. In the next unit, he mentions and makes a distinction between life and death. And one of the things that he puts together very well is that he defines death. That death is the dissolution of the ruh, the soul from the jasad, or the jism from the body. This is what death is. That's all it is. So when you understand that, so when you say that someone, oh, so-and-so has died or so-and-so is dead, it just means someone being mayyit or mata. Mata, you mean he died, he dies, or mayyit. It just means that he's undergone that process where the soul was disconnected from the body. That's all that means. Doesn't have any other connotation. So when you say, oh, well, so the dead can't hear, well, why can't they hear? They're still alive. If you say the dead can't hear, what do you mean? That once you're dead, you're annihilated? That once thoroughly dead, that's it now? Because that's the belief of the Quraysh in the time of the Rasulullah, that there is no resurrection of the deceased. Once thoroughly dead, that's it. But no, this is not true. And this connects up with their idea, which we mentioned, Surah Al-Kahf, the 18th Surah 105, وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. And you're told that he's not, he our Lord, or his Lord is not, he's not to associate with his Lord and worship with anyone, using anyone at all. This idea of shirk is because they're connecting the shirk of worship to the idea of the deceased. The idea that the deceased, if you're asking them to make intercession or asking anyone to make intercession for you, that somehow this action is going to take you out of the religion. And he goes into quite thorough detail to show that this is incorrect. In Unit 4, he discusses what is intercession and gives the different definitions of isti'ana, isti'adha, istighatha, all these different tawassul, wasila, all these different things, and shows that in reality, they're all different words, but they have the same meaning as the word shafa'ah, the original word. And he shows this repeatedly.
Yeah, and I think he made it really clear for anyone who has like confusion about this issue.
Yes, and I think that his also quoting of different scholars from different schools, because he could have just made it a work only from the school of Imam Ahmad, but he didn't. He quoted a wide swath of scholars. He quoted Imams An-Nawawi, Al-Buwaiti, Shurumbulali, Al-Qadi Iyad, to show that this isn't something that's just peculiar to Hanbalis. This is something that all of Muslim Orthodoxy has this understanding. We're all agreed upon what is shirk, what is kufr, what is tawheed, what is iman, what is kufr. We're all clear on what these things represent. He then takes us to the praiseworthiness of visiting the graves in Unit 5, setting out to them, making journeys to them. And what does that mean, and the significance of why it's important to visit the graves, for remembering the hereafter and remembering death, but also for giving the deceased their rights, because in the hadith in Tirmidhi, the Prophet ﷺ said, no one of you visits a grave and gives salam and then also speaks to them, except that the inhabitant of the grave answers him, although you don't hear it. So they still have their rights. They still are very much alive. The fact that they've gone on the other side of the barzakh, which is mentioned in Surah Al-Mu'minun, the 21st Surah 100, the fact that they've gone on the other side of the barzakh, which is just a barrier between this life and the hereafter, that doesn't mean that it's over for them. It's continuing on. And this issue that was brought up by this cult, modernists as well, because this is important for dealing with modernists, because modernists also were saying, well, there's no death other than this, the dead can't hear, and once someone's thoroughly dead, that's it for them. No, it's not. And he gives examples of karramat that happen to awliya, how bodies are supernaturally preserved. Of the prophets, he gives an example of Imam Jazuli, whose body was supernaturally preserved as a wali of Allah, and how his skin was still supple. All these types of things, the seeing of malaika, like these things are proving that the world that we live in is part of a bigger world that we're part of, which is the khalq, the creation. We just tend to think about our particular world where we live. Oh, I live in Mecca. I live in Singapore. So you just think about your life in Singapore, but Singapore it's really one dot in a very large creation in which you're sharing with animals, with malaika, with jinn, with rocks, with trees. You're sharing this whole creation with all the other creations around you, and you're one part of it. So you shouldn't think that, well, because I don't see it, it's not there. No, you don't see it because you're not looking. But if you were to give it a careful look and to really examine it, you would see what these imams like Ash-Shatti and others have explained in no uncertain terms. Now, the sixth and final unit, which again was originally a book, but sometimes he printed it with it, is a discussion on Tasawwuf. And it's here that I'd say that this book, I understand why it's at the end, but I would have understood if he'd put it at the beginning. Because this book reflects the spiritual gravitas rank of Imam Mustafa ibn Ahmad Ash-Shatti rahimahullah. He mentions how in his time there are two extremes with respect to tasawwuf, or what we're calling ihsan, worshiping Allah as we see. There are those from the cult of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab who deny tasawwuf or ihsan altogether. And then there's also, on the same side of opposers, there's some sheikhs that, because they've seen exaggerations, where they're kind of hostile to tasawwuf as well. Then on the other side, you have those that ascribe themselves to tasawwuf and ihsan, that are actually don't have any real link to it at all, and actually are corrupters and innovators. And so he walks this middle line where he first of all explains what is tasawwuf, what the purpose is of tasawwuf, how it's one of the rings of Islam, how it's needed, and why it's mentioned in the hadith of Jibreel, and it's mentioned in other hadith, and what that means. Because if someone looks at the hadith of Jibreel, you can't deny the 5 pillars of Islam that are mentioned in that hadith. Your Islam's incomplete. The deen is incomplete. Just like if you deny the 6 pillars of Iman, well, your deen's incomplete. If you deny the signs of the end of time, your deen is incomplete. Well, in the same way, if you deny ihsan, or if you want to call it tasawwuf or zuhud or tazkiyah or saluk, whatever we're talking about, the point in that hadith is to worship Allah as if you see him. If you deny that, the deen's also not complete. all those rings have to go together. And what Mustafa ibn Ahmad Ash-Shatti rahimahullah wa assesses and shows in his time is he assesses and shows that one of the things that the modernist movement does, which Salafi is a part of it, liberal as well, one of the things that it does is it makes people hard-hearted, and it takes away the marrow of this religion. And it reduces things like salah and dhikr to rituals, just dead rituals. Okay, we come, we do this, we make salah, that's it. The same person makes salah, goes, commits adultery, commits murder, does everything else. Oh, it's Dhuhr, let me pray Dhuhr again. That means you're not really benefiting or taking away what the salah is about.
No.
Okay, I did my 33 subhanallah, my 33 alhamdulillah, 33 Allahu Akbar. Okay, that's it. Now I'm going to commit adultery. Wait a minute, hold on. Do you not understand what you just did a second ago? Yeah, I did my 33, then I did La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahu mulku wa lahu alhamd wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. I did that 10 times as well after Fajr and also after Maghrib. Yeah, but you're still going and committing adultery. There's a contradiction between these things. It's contradiction. But modernism, what modernism did and does is it compartmentalizes people's lives. And I would say it's maybe one of the reasons for a rise in mental health issues, because people are trying to keep all these aspects of their life separate when they're one person. So one guy's Mahmoud is at the masjid. He's praying his salah and everything else. But then when he's with Mama and he's committing adultery and everything else, he's supposed to be someone else. When he's at work and he's Dave or whatever else, because sometimes they give themselves different names.
Right, sure.
So then he's at work, he's this person.
Wow.
When he's out with the boys and he's paintballing or doing other activities and they might stop and have a drink or maybe have shisha or what have you, he's someone else.
No.
And he's trying to live like 6 or 7 different lives with 6 or 7 different faces. And then we get surprised that these people have like these massive mental breakdowns. But of course they do, because you're telling them that who you are at work is not who you are at home, and who you are at home is not who you are at school. So a Muslim girl comes to school in France. They tell her, no, you have to take the headscarf off at school. We don't allow that in school, everything. Okay, so she's got to become someone else for school. Then she goes from school to home, and she has to become who she was before she left for school. Then she's got to go to work, and whoever she was at home and school, she can't be that at work. So it just creates these extremes in people. And it's one of the effects of the modernist thinking, that you have to be all these different things and all these different people. And how someone can say, well, I'm going to be the mayor of such and such city, but me being a Muslim won't affect at all how I rule or hold court over the city. What?
Yeah. That's supposed to be private matters only.
How's that even possible?
No.
If I'm Muslim and I'm governor over an area, necessarily my conclusions and my decisions will be influenced by being a Muslim.
Right.
It's the great body of making up my life, any more than if I said to someone, well, the amount of melanin that I have has absolutely nothing to do with who I am as a person. You're insane. Melanin has to do with my eye color, the fact that my pupils are black, the fact that my hair has a certain grade, my skin, my blood type, my haplogroup, like all of that stuff, it matters. You can't now, it shouldn't be the deciding factor of the worth of a man, how much is colors in your skin or not. But we can't also go to the other extreme. I'm colorblind, I don't see color. Then you're a fool. Because doctors do. When you come into the hospital and they see what blood type is he, what is he? Is there someone, okay, listen, he needs a donation. Is there someone that can donate an organ? It'd be good if it was someone from his family. Why? Because they look like him, same haplogroup, same everything. Well, the same thing. The very DNA of our ruh is this deen. But when someone
Mm.
says, "Oh no, that's what I do at home," but when I'm at work, well, how's that even possible?
Mhm.
It's not. You're one thing. You're
And
either a kafir or a
mhm.
Muslim.
I think also this includes where people have this mindset where if you are religious, keep it either at the masjid or at home,
Mm.
but outside, so dealing with anything that's other than ibadat, we choose. We choose it or we follow the law of the land or
Mm.
for anything we desire. So I think it's
Yes.
also this
And
separation.
those are serious problems because they think that the deen doesn't connect with any of that. And this
Right.
was just, oh, what was it? It wasn't Saturday. It was just this last Tuesday that Sheikh Muhammad Ahmad al-Rashid, we were going through the Manat al-Sabil, and he said, you need to understand and you need to convey this, not just in your own hearts, but to everyone else. That these books of fiqh, notice that we're going through books of fiqh to deal with buying in advance, trading, eating, drinking, marriage, divorce, all these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has rights over in your life. This is not just about, this deen was not just given for you to make salah. That is a part of it, but it's
Mm.
not all of it. And you need to make sure that you understand this and that your families understand it.
Subhanallah.
Because it's one of those things that, oh yeah, well, yes, I pray my fajr at this time and everything else. But if I decide to get a job where I'm acting as a security guard inside of a strip club, well, that's
Mm.
my business.
Right.
Well, no, no,
Right.
no, that's not your business. Someone else's business.
Mm.
That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's business. And as other believers, we have to say, listen, you got to look out because that affects the type of money that you're taking home.
Mm.
Well, that's my business. I went on my Hajj, I went on my Umrah, and I own a liquor store or I own an off license, and that's my business. Well, no, that's not your business because when I transact with you directly and your money is coming from these impermissible, that then puts
Mm.
me at risk.
And how erroneous is the statement when they say, no, that's between me and Allah?
Yeah, well, it is between me, you, and Allah, but it's between me too, because it affects me.
Right?
Just as much as said as when someone says, "Well, my religion is private." I was like, yeah, but it has public consequences. The day of judgment is not a private event; it's public
Mm.
to everybody.
Allah.
So, unfortunately for you, Islam involves everything,
Mhm.
and so imams like Mustafa Ash-Shatti and others had a very strong and powerful
Mm.
influence in their time, and he's very important. Now, some of his students, I want to mention some of his students because I think they're very useful to know because they're people today that impact us. So, one of his students is the late Imam Abdul Qadir ibn Badran ad-Dumi, rahimahullah wa radiya. And we're aware of him because his massive rank, what he's included, what he's done. He's left behind landmark fatwa regarding banking, regarding hunting with firearms, regarding the seerah, regarding many fatwa. The Telegraph, he echoed the fatwa of Mustafa ibn Ahmad al-Shatti. He echoed that fatwa. The fatwa on the telephone. He echoed that fatwa.
Mm. And
So many
also the change of clothing style, right, among the Muslims.
yes, clothing styles among Muslims and urf, and what does this mean?
MashaAllah.
Um, Abdul Qadir Badran, Ad-Dumi rahimahullah, was crucial in this area. Also, another student of Mustafa Ahmad al-Shatti, Ahmad Ash-Shami, rahimahullah wa rada. He's one of his students, the late Imam. He dies 1414 Hijri. He was one of the last students of Mustafa bin Ahmad al-Shatti. He carried a very large banner and is the sheikh of most of the sheikhs today in fiqh and in i'tiqad with respect to the scholars of the school of Ahmad. So our living faqih, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Rashid, was with him for 20 years.
Allah.
You have Ismail Badran, who's one of the big imams of this era. He took from Ahmad al-Shami. He took from Abdul Majid. He took from Ibn Qawaydir, like all these big elders. He took from Abdul Qadir. He took from Abdul Qadir al-Hattawi, these are three mujaddids. He has learned from
Allah,
three mujaddids
remarkable.
in unison. So he's learned from them the different kutub and books and things such as this. So Mustafa Ash-Shatti is the bequeather of that knowledge. He is the imam that's left behind the kutub in fiqh and also in hadith, because his name comes up in the books of hadith. Abdul Qadir ibn Badran, that's one of his sources for the Sihah when he studied the Sihah. He's one of the sources. He left behind children, and his cousin Muhammad Jamil al-Shatti, the historian and mufti, who wrote out Mukhtasar Tabaqat al-Hanabila. And one of the living Shattis of today, who died not long ago, rahimahullah, in 1436, Muhammad Isamuddin al-Shatti, rahimahullah, who's an hadith scholar. He taught at Jami Bani Umayyah, and he also did a lot of editing of the kutub of the Al-Maqdisi and other things. He's this figure, and their inheritors. Abdurrahman al-Shami and his brother Salih al-Shami, hafidhahumullah, their inheritors through Ahmad al-Shami, through Mustafa ibn Ahmad al-Shatti. Their inheritors. And these men have also been hostile to modernism, and have really tried to advise the laity to be upon taqwa, to be upon righteousness, to be upon good character, to understand that Islam is bigger than just the salah and just the wudu. There's more than that. It's greater than that. So he's also the teacher, Mustafa ibn Ahmad al-Shatti. He is the teacher of many of the scholars of the Gulf and Northern Africa. So when you have Abdul Hayy al-Kattani, is one of the last of the 500 students of Abdullah Sufyan Al-Qaddumi, rahimahullah, and also learned from Mustafa Ash-Shatti. Mustafa Ash-Shatti is also in the Senate chain of Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zaki al-Kattani, who's the successor of Abdul Hayy. He's very old now. He's the successor of the successor, right? He's alive in this time. He has Asanid Maliki. But he learned from Mustafa Ash-Shatti the kutub of a hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Majah, Nasa'i. He has ijazat and other things as well. He has asanid and other things as well. So Mustafa Ash-Shatti, if you write out a knowledge tree of all the people he's affected, it touches all the continents where human beings reside. Because his asanid and who he taught a vast array of people. He had Egyptians that he taught. He had Ahmad al-Khan from India. He had Shamis that he taught, Iraqis that he taught, people from North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and other areas that he taught. His asanid go far and wide. And he is because when he dies in 1348 Hijri, he is but one tree of several different trees. And he's a tree, but the root system of him as a tree is interconnected with a whole bunch of other roots. And he's connected to a whole bunch of other trees. And he was buried in his family's graveyard in 1348. So on the Catholic calendar, this matches to 1929. So this is not that long ago. This is just under 100 years ago that this man lived and left behind all these great students, all these fantastic scholars, and has laid the blueprint for us.